Welcome to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, June 26, 2017. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Leaks May.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Polika.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Piana.
Here.
And Mayor Coulter.
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum this evening. Next item of business is the approval of the agenda.
I would like to make an amendment, a couple adjustments to the agenda. I propose that we reorder our presentations, starting with Beautification Awards presentation, Ferndale Arts, Culture, and Commission as B, and then C is the West Troy Parking Development Update. And as part of that, relocate the regular agenda item 7A of consideration of initiating bid documentation to proceed immediately thereafter the presentation on the West Troy Street presentation.
Support.
All right, it's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion on the agenda? And I think that makes sense. So I know we have some folks here for beautification awards and other things. If you don't want to sit through another parking presentation, you don't have to. But you are certainly invited to if you like. All right, any final discussion on the agenda?
No.
All right, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Leaks May.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Polika.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is adopted. So that means our beautification awards, folks, are first. So, Robin, you're going to present those this evening?
I am.
Excellent.
Excellent. And happy summer to you all.
Thank you.
Trying to figure out which one of these. Is it that one or this one? Okay. All right, let's try this. This is the Beautification Awards for June. Is that it? Yep, there you go. Awesome. The first house here is in the southwest quadrant, 1706 West Hazelhurst. And is Allison here? Awesome. Come on up, Allison. You've been a resident there for how many years? 10. Wow. Good for you. We thought the front yard was very inviting, and in fact, when we get these nominations and I see who wins, I always sort of Google the address to see what I can dig up. And so you have actually done some really good work. The picture that I saw didn't have the ramp in the front. It didn't have the chairs. There was a lot of overgrown shrubbery. So in the 10 years you've been there, you've done a wonderful job. And we thought that the chairs out front were very, very inviting. So thank you so much. If you'll come over to this side, we'll get to... she's going that way. Let's dance.
Well, clap while you take that.
All right, the next one is in the southeast quadrant at 170 Ardmore. Is Stuart and Kelly Green here? Yeah. Come on up.
Hey.
This lovely little craftsman bungalow was built in 1923. We really liked the tomatoes in the bags out front. And the raised garden, and I, after doing a little digging, found out that you actually work for a company that grows microgreens, right? That's awesome. Very good. Excellent. Well, come on over and let's get a photo. You want to put the lovely lady in the middle? There we go.
But before you go back, I mean, tell us, because I'm curious if no one else is, just tell us a little bit about the inspiration for the sort of the tomato garden, or there's other stuff going on too.
It's like a big work in progress. We've only been there going on our second year.
Yeah.
So we made like a bunch of raised beds. I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
It's growing in the front.
All right.
It's a big work in progress.
Excellent. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but it was great. Nice job.
Thank you. All right, the third home is in the southwest quadrant at 2026 Renson, and is James and Sarah Roggenbuck in the audience. Did I pronounce that correctly? Awesome. This lovely house was built in 1949, and we thought that the porch, now they've got the chairs covered, so it's, you don't get the full effect. But especially after this past weekend with all of the various musical activities going on porches, 3 out of 4 houses that got awards had nice little porches on them, so that's a great little trend. Liked the use of the stones across the front and the border there, so congratulations. Would you like to add anything to it? How long have you been there?
We've been there about 20 years.
Oh, wow. Okay, awesome.
Most of all the rocks in the front came from Lake Huron. We have a place up in
Did they know you took them?
Port Austin.
Okay, guys. just making sure.
And you look big enough that you could pick those up and put them in the truck.
Most of them I picked up 20 years ago.
Okay.
Oh, come on over and get a photo.
Excellent. Congratulations.
All right, and the next house is, let's see here, Northwest Quadrant, 863 West Maplehurst, and is Paul Beasley and Eric Blaine in the audience. There you go, come on up. Again, I found an old photo of this house, and they have done quite a bit of work on it as well. We like the symmetry of it. It's got a lovely collection of boxwoods and burning bush in the front and some hostas. And from what we understand, the backyard is really nice too. So we'd like a tour later sometime, okay? Of course. This house was built in 1929. And how long have you all been there?
3 years.
3 years? Awesome. Very cool. Excellent. Anything else you want to throw in there, contribute about the house? It was described that he was the brain and he was the brawn to do it. So whatever works, right?
Symmetry was the real plan. So
There you go. Awesome. Very, very cool. Well, excellent. Come on over and get a photo. All right, and for our commercial award is David Graylin in the audience. Now, come on over, David. And while you're at it, Kristen, come on up with him. Now, first of all, the color scheme of this building is a wonderful contrast, orange and blue. They're direct complementary of each other. It's like the red and green at Christmas time, the violet and yellow in the springtime. So it's a great color contrast that just bounces off of each other. And we've been sort of watching the building ever since they started moving and painting and putting the bubbles all over the place. And so Waterworks has done a really, really great job of capturing the eye there. They are on the corner of Hazelhurst and Hilton. Sorry, I know it's right there on the screen. I didn't say I was brilliant, okay? Just creative. And so you've been there since 2012, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Very good. From what we understand, he's the guy that owns the place, but she's the one who actually does the plants and the flowers out front. So we actually went ahead and we got 2 certificates, one for each of you, so you don't have to share. Okay? Come on over. This one is for David, and that one is for Kristen. Awesome. Excellent. Yeah. And now a reminder, the July Beautification Awards and the Coneflower Awards, for those of you who may not be familiar, don't know where you've been, because everybody knows that the coneflower is the flower of Ferndale as far as our official flower. So we will be looking for those yards and plantings where the coneflower is featured in a really attractive way. The nominations are due on July the 18th, and you can do those nominations either on our Facebook page, or I believe you can also come here to the city office and get a form to fill out and send it over to us. We would love to have more and more nominations of houses. And if you're not already following us on Facebook, we've already exceeded the 1,000 mark on friends following the page. So we're really, really excited about that. And that wraps us up for this month. Thanks so much.
Great job. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Our next presentation then would be the Ferndale Arts and Cultural Commission, and you've got a tough act to follow. Jason?
That I do, but I'm going to take a stab at it anyways.
All right.
So I just want to make an announcement / invitation to everybody on Saturday, July 8th, so 2 Saturdays from today. We are doing a trial run of something we hope to do a much larger version of next summer called a garden party, in which we have artists and musicians kind of playing around different gardens, sort of like what we just did with the, or what Ferndale just did with the Porch Festival, but gardens and art and music. And as an odd development, I have now been conscripted to play 45 minutes of music myself for this. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And then I also have flyer invitations for all of you. So July 8th, 6 p.m. until 9 p.m. On the 8th.
So that sounds cool. Yeah.
Jason, do you have the address you want to share?
Yes, actually, I think it's on this. Sorry, 119 Early Boulevard. Earl, sorry.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Look forward to it. Yeah, if you give them to Marnie, we'll make sure to get them. Thanks, Jason. All right, our third and final presentation is a presentation on the West Troy Parking Development Update, and Joe Gaushaw, our city manager, is going to make that presentation.
Give me one moment to set it up. Fancy, huh? Tonight is the unveiling of the hopefully last presentation for everybody's sake about parking from me. This is the next update on the development on Troy and the process we've made so far. Here is a little process map of kind of where we've come to. City Council did approve the West Troy site as the location to pursue on October 24th last year. Since then, we have achieved each milestone that's marked off in gray prior to tonight's little map. We had a series of public engagement that we had upon initial approval, including focus groups and including surveys, and our first public meeting that was held in December. All of that first round of public engagement was held between October and January. Next, we concurrently, actually, we initiated several project studies, and we went through the schematic design, which were early utility discussions. And then we brought that information to the March 13th City Council meeting, where we asked for approval to begin drafting early concepts for a mixed-use development. At that meeting, City Council directed staff and to work with the steering committee to move forward in drafting 2 concepts. We since then have held 3 additional steering committee meetings, which I'm about to talk about next. A steering committee that did consist of actors who conveyed interest to participate on the steering committee during the first round of public engagement were invited to work with the Planning Commission to form a committee to help advise the project team on certain points throughout the project. This committee did exist of representation from residents, members of the Planning Commission, and the business community, and downtown property owners. You'll notice in the little speech bubbles, for those who can read on the screen, these are the topics that were of interest that were conveyed to us by the steering committee that we should respond to as part of the meeting process. We've identified 4 topics to which the steering committee summary summarized for us in terms of how they wanted us to react, things that were a priority for them. First, we'll talk about traffic. Traffic was consistent across the board, a concern for residents and the business community. What we learned during that process is, actually, you know what, I'm going to skip that. I have one more, I have a general summary slide about how we responded to these reactions. Let me finish this slide. Yeah. To summarize the traffic impact, the important point was that they wanted the city to do whatever they could to minimize traffic disruption along the alley. So how we would enter the deck was a priority importance for the steering committee. Next, design. By the end of the 3 meetings, it was unanimous that the mixed use would represent a greater long-term investment potential for the city in looking 50 years out. What do you want this development to look like downtown? That being said, They wanted us to be mindful about the construction timeline and costs and be sensitive to minimizing disruption amongst the businesses, as well as to further prove out the financials, which is also represented in the fourth point. From a safety perspective, they expressed regard and concern over pedestrian and bicycle use, so multimodal access for this development, and to preserve walkability and to activate the street and safe walking zones throughout the downtown. And finally, financial outlook. What does this look like? First and foremost, can the auto parking fund, does it have the ability to pay on the bond and sustain all of the expenses moving forward the next few years? So the project team's actions, how do we respond to those reactions from the steering committee? One, traffic impacts. We did initiate a traffic study. The traffic study was done by Opus International, and they did confirm that the street network can withstand and absorb all of the demand that's going to be generated by the new development. That includes the residential and the downtown demand. Secondly, they studied all of the major intersection points in the downtown and all the entry points into the West Troy development, and they did confirm that it would have minimal impact on level of service. And what that looks like to traffic engineer is 10 to 15 seconds during the peak hour. The peak hour would be between 5:45 and 6:45. That's when we're the most active downtown. You could expect a maximum level of service impact to have 10 to 15 seconds of additional wait time at a stop or an intersection during just during peak hours. From a design perspective, they were very clear that they weren't happy with the original height. At March 13th, the original height would have been parking above ground completely, and the final design would have been about 89 feet. They asked us to see what we can do to respond to that and cut that height down. So we worked with our engineers, and the architect team brought down a concept that would involve taking one level of parking below the ground, and it would reduce the height from 89 feet to 65 feet. That is within the tolerance of the zoning height regulations. So we are within zoning. We do not need an exception. And it reduced it significantly, about 25 feet. In doing so, architects and engineers also understood that be mindful of the traffic impacts. So they were able to provide a design that allowed for one point of entry and exit along West Troy, not along the alley, for both above ground and below ground parking options, while preserving the total number of spaces. And from a safety perspective, the mixed-use design is offering what they call a shared street design concept. And that is, from curb to curb, we're looking at one level of grade that provides access and encourages access to all those who are using our street network, not just vehicles, but also pedestrians and bicyclists. Furthermore, the traffic engineers provided a recommendation for the city to explore with our public safety departments and city officials that would involve controlling traffic and access along West Troy that would mitigate exiting traffic into the residential neighborhoods and compel that exiting traffic out to Woodward. So we will explore that out, but that recommendation was within the feasibility of it would have minimal impacts on traffic as well. And finally, for a financial outlook, we took both concepts to Oakland County Assessing, and they were able to give us a valuation for each concept that I'll speak about in a moment, as well as an estimate on the future earning potential for a new tax base. Here's a summary slide of each of the concepts that the steering committee reviewed. On the left side, you'll see the mixed use one level below ground option. And on the right side, you'll see a single use with a smaller retail shell. I want to clarify that smaller retail shell is pulled from the city's code of ordinances, which does require that any parking development that is built downtown would require some level of street level retail as part of that to encourage walkability and density and business diversity. You'll see the construction time. We'll go point by point, actually. The gross parking spaces for the mixed use is 397. The single use is estimated to be 327. Construction time, this is consistent with the March 13th findings, 12 to 15 months for the mixed use and 9 to 12 for the single use plus smaller retail shell. Construction cost, the left side, would be about $17.45 million, and that would involve the 4 levels of parking, alley beautification to the rear for the residents, as well as the West Troy streetscape improvement, the shared street model, as well as the 15,000 square foot of street level retail. On the right side, you'll see the single use smaller. It's about $8.64 million. It's precast concrete. It will just involve 3 levels of parking without any alley beautification or streetscape improvement or screening for the residents in the rear. It does involve a 9,000 square foot street level retail presence, a significantly smaller footprint. The annual bond payments for the mixed use is looking to be about $1.3 million at the max, and the single use would be about $890,000, almost $900,000 per year. Looking at the height differentials, the mixed use one level below is 65 feet, and the single use is 39. And both access points, we would encourage access point at the West Troy. Finally, from a planning perspective, the mixed use is in alignment with the city's vision and planning documents, including the most recently adopted master land use plan. The single use would not be in conformance with that. So we wanted to break down the revenue factors. That was a consistent theme from the June 6th community input session. And we wanted to bring that back here and break that down in 4 categories. 1, operating revenues. We wanted to show what this looks like to operate this garage in terms of income and expense. 2, we wanted to demonstrate the future land valuations brought to us by Oakland County. 3, we would demonstrate that value through the future property tax base. And 4, the ancillary area impacts. What does a mixed use have versus the single use? So in this first slide, we look at the earning potential for the first 4 years. You see the mixed use development has considerable more opportunities for income, a significant bump in year 3 and year 4, where you could have new office and or new residential accompanying that space. The single use would just be incomes from, well, actually you'll see the income mix in the right slide. You'll see the cash flow breakdown. The single use is significantly more reliant on transient parking demand, which is your daily parker. People are just coming in and coming out for the days. They lose a significant amount of permit because of the restriction on uses. It's a smaller space for retail, so it's smaller lease revenues associated with that, and a smaller tax base as well. It's important to note that the expenditure line, the cost to operate a deck, both 3 levels and 4 levels, is virtually the same. Next, we have the DOT estimated future land valuation. This is what Oakland County gave back to us. They estimated that the future land value for the office being presented, the street level retail and residential, would equal about $4.3 million, which would net about $115,000 in new taxes for this land. The single use was the smaller footprint street level retail, and that would net just about $15,000 in new taxes. Now we want to project this out to 2035 using some modeling. Doing so, you'll notice a small bump in 2020 and 2021. That accounts for that valuation that Oakland County gave us. So what would the city do with that future office? If they should pursue that, that could be either land lease or air rights sales. However, that's to be determined, but the city would have those options, and we used Oakland County's base number to put the value on those options. That being said, you'll see 2022 you are returned to normal operating expenses and operating revenues rather. And you'll see projected outward that in this model we included the entirety of all current parking expenses plus future bond liability and all current parking revenues plus future parking revenues from the DOT project. And the auto parking fund is more than projected to be able to absorb the long-term debt for the project, for the mixed-use project. And then finally, we talk about the 4th category of the pyramid, the very top. What are the ancillary impacts? What are the impacts of mixed use versus single use? We have supply and demand comparison, and the important point to be made between these two charts is the gap between the supply and demand under 2022. The supply on the left shows the mixed use, and because of you're introducing new demand factors for office, for residential, and more street level retail, you're encouraging more demand, which means your supply and demand are the gap between the two is restricted, which is good because if you're making a bond payment, you want to make a bond payment on a deck that's being used and is full and is active. The concern with the single-use development is in 2022, you're not introducing any new demand, so you're sustaining the current demand that exists today. So there's a concern about overcapacity and paying for a garage that is not currently being utilized to its maximum. Mid-presentation shakeup. And then just one more discussion point about the ancillary impact is we're looking to diversify the current business traffic that is downtown. This is a study of our current daytime traffic that was done. About 90% of our current traffic is restaurant retail with a high emphasis on restaurant. That's just the way those two categories were merged during the study. The peak demand, as we all know, for anyone who's been down there, between 7 and 9, especially on the weekends. There's a strong need for daytime foot traffic. Our traffic study proved that out. That's published on parkferndale.com. And there's a nighttime supply shortfall. Looking at the estimated demand with the mixed-use development on Troy, you would see an introduction, you would see a diversification of that pie chart. So now you have 30% of your customer base is office employees, and office employees, the assumption are going to be 9-to-5ers that are going to be introducing a daytime element that is not existing on the west side right now. 37% is now restaurant retail, so you've really reduced that, and we're moving more towards a diversified business climate, more away from what has been called the classified entertainment district. Parking demand shifts from 3 to 6. That is when your deck is filled with office employee permits, who then leave, and when they leave, they have added capacity to absorb that nighttime crowd that we enjoy down here. And so staff's recommendation to City Council, after several rounds of public engagement and research and study, we do believe the development on Troy, the mixed-use concept, should be the preferred concept for council to pursue. What that looks like is a phased project where the first phase, the city's bonding for 397 parking spaces. That's 4 levels of parking. One of those levels is below grade. We are bonding for the street-level retail build-out. We will be building out a shell for 12,000 to 15,000 square feet. We will be bonding for a West Troy streetscape and placemaking improvements. That includes the shared street designs. That includes temporary special events plaza located along West Troy. That includes pocket parks around the development. And that also includes community meeting spaces. We are looking at alley beautification and greening to help improve the alley that separates the development between the residents behind it. There will be sustainable elements that we are pursuing as part of that. In the future, a phase 2, once this is built, the city could have the option with this development to pursue 40,000 square feet of office space. That office space is pushed off of the residents behind it. That was an important point of the steering committee that I failed to mention earlier. The steering committee did not want the future office space to be abutting over their yards. So the architects actually were able to revisit the design and push it back 60 feet from the residents, actually. So the only office frontage right now would be exposed to the West Troy Commercial Street and not along the alley or the residents in the rear. In addition, there's a small section along Allen that we're recommending be pursued for future residential. 18 to 24 units. It would fit within the footprint that we have discussed, and that would serve as a soft buffer to transition people between the residential into the downtown. So you're not just pushing that deck traffic right to the edge of Allen, and that's what your neighbors are looking at from the residential perspective. Looking at the financing, as we go down the 4 summary bullets, we've talked about the height at 65 feet. We've talked about the placemaking elements. The financing elements, as we've stated before, the city does expect to issue up to $20 million in bonds. That's up to, that means that's what we're capped at issuing. And though the repayment would be paid for through the auto parking fund. This is just one more snapshot. Here we broke down the construction costs for each of the mixed-use components. You'll notice that they sum at $17.4 million. The parking itself, the 4 levels of parking below grade, the excavation is $12.9. The street level retail is estimated to be about $1.5 million. The alley beautification and placemaking are about $1.5 million. And an optional transfer floor that would enable a future office would be about $1.5 million. That is an option, and as part of our bid packet tonight, we are recommending that we just do just that. We build in an option to include or exclude as part of the bid package, and council would be able to decide that as we walk through the planning commission final design process. The future mixed-use valuation we've discussed, and then the annual revenue opportunities in year 4 we've discussed. I'd like to summarize what we gain from a mixed-use development is we gain those ancillary benefits that we discussed, the new jobs and downtown economic growth. We do diversify our downtown business environment and get an influx of daytime potential users of the system. First and foremost, we address the most acute shortage of parking within the city. This was identified as a lot that does offer the most acute shortage. We do directly meet that current demand, and we meet the future demand as well. And the city gains some downtown green community space that has been consistently expressed as desirable throughout the public engagement process. So just in summarizing phase 1, we are looking at 397 spaces, 12,000 to 15,000 square feet of street level retail. Phase 1 height is just 40 feet, which is the same as the other option. You're still getting the placemaking elements, and the financing and repayment scenario remains the same. Here's just a glimpse at the next steps and where we are today. Today we're looking at, we're asking council to approve this so we can narrow our focus on moving forward to final design for just this one concept. The next step beyond that would be August, September Planning Commission meetings. We are looking at early August for a Planning Commission meeting. That would be an open invitation to the public to come in and attend those meetings and consider that another round of community input. That is a public meeting. You will be able to work directly with the planning commissioners and the project team and watch them discuss how best to move forward on site plan and design. We envision a second planning commission meeting, and then we would seek approval from the planning commission and city council. We would envision in September. Upon approval, that's when we would formally ask for an approved adoption of the bid documents that would enable us to go out to bid at that time for the construction. And with that, I wanted to also invite questions from council to our architect who's here from Fusco, Schaefer, and Pappas, Blake Hatterman. I'm going to pull up the designs we have. I thought I included those in here. They're just in the packet, not in the presentation, but I did have them queued up from the city's website. So these documents are available on parkferndale.com. You can go there and you can see designs that were specified for each concept at the June 6th community input session. And I would welcome comments or questions right now from council.
And to be clear, what you're asking and what staff is asking is for council's approval to initiate the funding to draft the final design and bid documents for this project.
Yes, that is correct. So should council
Which
approve
was regular
this?
agenda item A, just for everyone's sake, and we're going to move that up now.
If
Okay.
I may, through
Yes.
the chair, it's a process clarification. So our questions can address either point, both the slide deck that Joe's presented as well as the requested motion at this time?
Yes.
Okay. Then I have questions whenever
yes.
it's appropriate.
I think what I'd like to do, because now this is, I'm going to treat this like a regular agenda item,
Sure.
and normally what I would do is allow the public an opportunity to address council when we get to that portion of the agenda, which is where we're at. So I want to open this up now to the public comment portion, now that you've seen Joe's presentation and the recommendation to council, and invite the public to come up. Come on up. If there's anyone here that would like to address council on this issue, come on up, give us your name and your address, and 3 minutes or less to express your your thoughts and opinions on, or questions on this before council deliberates. Is there anyone that would like to address council on Joe's presentation this evening? Good evening.
Matt Helms, 618 East Webster. Looking at the designs, having been to the most recent public input session, I'm really pleased with the direction this is going. I think a lot of thought went into it in terms of addressing some of the concerns that nearby residents had and others, and with multiple forms of buffers and space. I think this design is looking to be the one that Ferndale needs, and I think I speak for a lot of folks who support this deck that the time is now. So, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Joanne Wilcox, 1615 West Marshall. I just want to say, do it now, as soon as possible, please. I've lived in Ferndale for over 50 years. I've been in the Ferndale, Oak Park, Pleasant Ridge area my whole life. I have seen the downtown be up here and down here, and it has come up and don't stop. It's got to continue on. We can't just sit at a status quo and say, it'll be fine. It won't be. We need it now, as soon as possible. Absolutely support this 150%. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Come on up. Good evening.
Hi. Michael Valentine from 151 Jewel Street. First of all, happy summer. And before we talk about that, I just have to say that the front porch concerts were awesome. So
yeah,
it's really a cool event.
Agreed.
The way this has been done and worked through is really great, and I would just like to see this proceed because I feel it's beneficial for the long-term growth of the city. The only thing I'd ask is maybe that something could be done too for retailers that have been here, maybe work out a operating system where shoppers at some of the retail establishments could get some kind of a discount or free parking for an hour or something like that to support the retail, because we need that here. But other than that, this looks great. So I hope that this is proceeded. So
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address council this evening? All right, seeing none, I will open it up to questions and comments of council. Yes, and Councilman Martin.
Sure. First off, Joe, congratulations. This is a great deck, and having participated with the Planning Commission Resident Advisory Team, I think it was very well done. So hats off to you. You really did a nice job shepherding this through. I'm sure it felt like being out in the weeds at times, but kudos to you, and I'm sure you know more about parking construction at this point than you ever deemed in your life. I do have 3 questions real quick. First off, in your projected timeline, there was a really critical date off there, which is when would you project we would break ground?
Right now,
I won't hold you to it.
I think our best guess would be in early 2018 in January. Okay. We did meet with some of the businesses, and they expressed that the city, if possible, could delay and give them one more holiday season without construction. So that is something we're being sensitive to as well.
And that's perfectly feasible in the middle of winter and everything.
Yeah, it's actually, from the construction managers that we've held meetings with, it's actually more ideal because it's the most inefficient time anyways, but it also is the most minimal crew-intensive time. So all they need is to excavate, which the machines do most of that work anyways, not the people. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of they're going to have the most skeleton crew possible, and so doing that in January would just make sense.
Great. Second topic is you're asking for bonds up to $20 million with a projected project cost of $17.4 million. That's fine if we put a ceiling on it for the borrowing amount, but if the project goes into serious overcost run, that would still come back to council, right?
Yes.
Okay, we're not saying go nuts for $20 million and don't bother me unless it tops 20?
Not at all.
Great, perfect. I just want to point that out. And then could you clarify for me, I think the information in the packet is terrific, but the question I have and I didn't see, and forgive me if I just missed it, the $1.2 million to actually initiate drafting a bid document, what does that break down to? Like, what does the $1.2 million go towards? Like, why does drafting a bid document cost $1.2 million, and who is that being paid to?
So it's drafting the big documents is just part of it. It also covers taking the design process through final design. So this is really where the architects and engineers are doing all of their critical work. What they've done to date is really not representative of what a complete final design looks like, and that really is going to be negotiated through the Planning Commission and City Council. But typically, and I think I put this in the Planning Commission, the industry expectation is 5 to 6% of total construction costs is what you spend.
I saw that as a fee.
On soft costs. That's your architectural engineering fees.
Okay.
So 1 to 1.2, we put a not to exceed on it, and that would be the 1.2, which does align with the scope that they presented us.
Sure. My point is, and just make sure I'm making the right one, that $1.2 million does not represent just drafting an RFP. There's a lot of technical, professional work buried in that.
No, that is correct.
Okay.
Technical fees.
Because otherwise, it looks like an exorbitant number. When you figure the amount of talent, design, required still to get us to that point, it's really not. Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
Other questions? Why don't we start with questions first, and then we can move
Sure.
on to sort of comments.
Through the chair, I have a question about the actual construction of retail, office, and housing related to the actual construction bid process. So it's my understanding the bid process is for the actual deck portion, not the 3 other components that will be added on. And those would be, so can you talk a little bit about timing and attracting the right developer or developers who would build the office, retail, or residential, and how that would impact timing?
To clarify, the construction manager that we would go out to bid would be responsible for building the actual garage and the street level retail. That would be included in that same bid. The future office and future residential are what would be on spec. And we would, right now we've already taken several meetings with developers who've expressed interest. We were getting phone calls quite frequently for the past year. So what we would like to do is once a concept is moved forward and approved, we could submit a letter of interest to the developer community and just see what kind of interest is actually out there for what's being pursued.
Right. So I just want to make clear that, can you help me understand if we got a developer to do office, we would try to do the construction of it in tandem with the rest of the parking deck, right? Or would that come at a later date?
That is information and recommendation we would bring back to council. That would ultimately be a city council decision.
Okay.
But so our to answer that, we would go out for a letter of interest to developers, and then we would bring those findings back to council.
Okay. Let me clarify my question again. Is it the interest of the city to make sure that we are capitalizing on construction at the same time for all the components of this project? Or are we going to do the deck and then office and then residential later? I just want to make sure there are options here and that people understand what the options do to a construction time frame.
Doesn't affect construction. So we're keeping the options open. So the very first critical mass for us is when we get the bids back with or without, with and without the transfer slab. So that's the first piece of information we need. So there is no, it's not going to hold back construction if we have to wait, if you will, for office space or the housing development on the side. So it'll all work in tandem. But we first need to know what that transfer slab is going to cost us to see if that's something that we have the ability to fund. That's why he put in the packet that we could be bonding up to $20 million.
Okay.
Did that help you?
So
it's a question we can't completely answer today because we have so many unknowns, but it's not going to delay. It's not going to delay getting in the garage.
Yes, the design phase through the construction bids is going to clarify the pricing for the transfer deck, which will determine how much more we need to go out for the bond, right? Up to the $20 million. But it also will determine what the cost is for the developer to put that component on top of the building.
That would be true.
Okay. That's what I was trying to make. Yes. Okay.
Other questions for Joe?
Question through clarification, I guess. So a couple weeks ago, we had a public presentation at the Rust Belt. A number of people gave their thoughts and opinions about the design ideas, suggested some changes. Tonight, we are not bidding on a final design.
Correct. Tonight, the purpose of the community input session on June 6th was to present the two concepts and to get reactions from the public. We received, and we've posted this to the website, just a summary of the details, the notes or minutes, if you will, from that meeting. And we received both positives and negatives on each concept, but nothing that was inconsistent with what we've already heard throughout the engagement process. So while we accepted those reactions, tonight was ultimately about making a recommendation to narrow down the focus on final design for a concept. Essentially, at some point, we have to choose which one to go with. And so that's what we're doing tonight. Our recommendation is a mixed use. Now that we can do that, the next step would be pursuing final design via the Planning Commission as the next public opportunity for input.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. So if there's no sort of questions of fact, this would be an appropriate time to
Do a motion?
Yep. Sure.
Shall I
Yeah, that too.
entertain a motion?
Yeah,
Why don't I do that?
That as well.
I move to approve funding to initiate the drafting of bid documents for a final mixed-use design for the development on Troy, with funds not to exceed $1,200,000 to be paid for from the auto parking fund and the appropriate account number, contingent on the review and approval of the city attorney and city manager.
Support.
So it's been moved by Piana and supported by Martin. Now, discussion on that.
I already made my comments about Joe's process, but I remember deciding to run 6 years ago and say, fixing parking needs to be a priority. And 6 years later, while I'm disappointed we're still talking about it, I'm thrilled we're moving forward. So I'm good.
All right.
I'm thrilled that we're actually tackling multiple challenges for our downtown. That we're trying to bring more jobs to our downtown, that we're trying to bring more foot traffic to our downtown during the day. People make a downtown and people make businesses go. And so this is all about making sure that we're taking a multi approach to addressing our downtown. And so I've been a proponent of making sure that we do this the right way, that it fits the context of our community, and that it has citizen engagement. And Joe, I think you have and the city staff have drafted and created and implemented a pretty robust process. We learned from 360, and we have parlayed all of that learning into here, and I think I'm eager to see what the designs will entail going forward. I do have some opinions about the special events plaza, but I will share those during the appropriate design phase going forward. But mostly, I think, for me, this is about 30 years paying off a bond. This is about financial ability to do this over time. And everything that is being projected with the future car use is that it's going to be less and we'll have more autonomous vehicles 30 years from now. I don't know what, 20 years, 10 years will hold, but that vehicle and car use is changing, and so that we have the ability to pay this bond off over time as the world changes around us. And I think having housing, office, and retail allows us to be stable and make sure that the council 20 years from now, 25 years from now, is a strong financial position in order to continue to pay off that bond.
Others? I'll jump in. And I also have to start by thanking you, Joe. You were not a parking expert when we hired you. You are now, and we really do appreciate your leadership on this project. I also want to thank the countless residents who have been involved in this from the beginning. Critical and supportive alike, both in the 360 project and all through this project. We made a commitment that we were going to engage the community as we never have before, and I think we've lived up to that commitment, and I feel comfortable that we studied this as if we've studied no other project that I'm aware of, and the results of that are in your presentation. And so I want to just thank everybody for the passion and the involvement that they've had. This project I'm still surprised that there's people that think we shouldn't do anything at all. This project identifies a very real need that has been identified. The data supports it. It's not just anecdotally not being able to find a parking deck. It addresses a very real need. But as the Mayor Pro Tem said, it also addresses some other things. And I know that our DDA director isn't here, but they are a partner in this with us. And they have been telling us for years that we have to increase the foot traffic, vary the kinds of activities that we have downtown. And this project does that. As part of that feedback, I'm impressed that we've made significant changes to this. This doesn't look like it did a year ago or even 6 months ago. So we have tried to be as responsive as we can to those concerns, and I think that has been impressive. I continue to be as worried as others have said about, our retailers and our businesses downtown, and we're going to, in partnership, especially on that issue, in partnership with our DDA, we're going to tackle the mitigation of the construction as well as we can and make their lives as good as we can, knowing that it won't be perfect for 12 to 15 months.
15.
That, by the way, is very persuasive to me. There were some folks that thought this could get done in 6 months, and because we're really arguing about 3 or 4 months of construction, the benefits for me of a mixed-use deck far outweigh the extra 3 months or so that it would cost. So I appreciate that. And finally, to Councilwoman or Mayor Pro Tem Piana's point about the financing of this, that's always been a concern of mine as well. And I don't know that we've said that enough, but it's important that we build enough spaces so that in 5 years we don't have the same problem. But it's just as important that we don't overbuild. There are communities who have overbuilt parking decks, and now they've got a bond payment that they can't support with the revenue from the deck. I don't think we've overbuilt this, and I think that the revenue, just even from the parking alone, is going to get us there. But the mixed-use components is what is the conservative guarantee that makes the bond payment possible. And also, as Matt Gibbs told us, the retail expert, makes it more recession-proof. I mean, nobody's recession-proof. But having those components on there makes it more recession-proof so that if a terrible recession happens and nobody wants to come to Ferndale and park there, we're still getting lease payments and revenue from that project. So for all of those reasons, I am supportive with moving ahead with the mixed-use project this evening. Anyone else would like to?
Well, stated it all. Let's move forward.
There you go.
Move forward.
All right. So if there's no further comments, then I'm going to ask Marnie to call the roll.
Okay, council members Martins?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Piana?
I think I need more time to think about it.
Shut up. No, sorry.
Yes.
Leaks May?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Yes.
All right, now moving on to call to audience. And now this is your opportunity, if you're here if you've joined us to talk about something that's not on the agenda, this is your opportunity to address council this evening. You get 3 minutes again, just like before. Tell us your name, your address, and 3 minutes is yours. Julia, good evening.
Good evening. My name is Julia Music, 436 Silman, and I wanted to talk to you guys tonight about a little bit of the success of Ferndale Pride 2017. Some of the new things that we added this year, we had our Sober Space area presented by Coventry Creations. It was very, very popular. We gave away free drinks from Western Market, and it was busy all day long, and lots of people were coming in and asking us to repeat that area. So we plan to expand it and make it even more user-friendly for next year. Our children's space was expanded because of Blue Care Network of Southeast Michigan and Candlewick, and we were able to have about 400 kids come through and make their own magic wands. And then we also expanded our gender equality visibility thanks to Anita's Kitchen. They helped us buy 20 transgender pride flags that you probably noticed up all over the city. And we got some national exposure. The Advocate magazine published over 100 pictures from our Pride Festival, and I received emails from people all over the country who had seen those, who I did not know. So just people who were in mid-state New York who wanted to say, that looked like a great festival, and if we know we live in mid-state New York, but we'll try to help out if you need anything. So really great response from the Advocate. We had 117 vendors this year, and we had a wait list for the first time ever, and it was a deep wait list. We could have added on more vendors. And our businesses all reported a great Pride, which is exciting. We want our businesses to do well during our festival. And our volunteer party is next Tuesday at 6:30 at Rosie O'Grady's. So if you volunteered for at least one shift during the day of, or you volunteered prior to, you can come out to Rosie O'Grady's and have a little celebration. And I know that you guys are all waiting for this announcement. So June 2nd, 2018 is Ferndale Pride number 8. We believe, although this might be slightly premature, but we believe that will be proudly presented by the Candlewick. So we will have a naming rights sponsor for the first time in 3 years, thanks to Candlewick Shop. So buy your candles downtown at Candlewick. And thank you very much for all your support. Many of you helped out, volunteered, supported, gave words of encouragement. So I appreciate all the help I got from you guys as well.
Well, thank you. I think it's fair to say this was maybe the best one yet. Right?
I think so.
I think it was. The weather was helpful, but
first drop of rain happened at
midnight. It wouldn't have mattered if the weather was
right.
But it wouldn't have mattered if there was great weather, but wasn't well organized, and you guys just did an outstanding job. So thank you.
If I may, through the chair,
Yes.
I want to just add on behalf of the Ferndale Community Foundation, which acts as an underwriting entity, more or less. Not underwriting, but fiduciary. I just want to thank you. There's no way this would have been as successful. You put more effort and energy and heart into this than anybody has. And you're a fantastic partner and community member. And I just can't say enough about this is your success. And you should be very proud of what you've contributed to this community. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And we don't have our final numbers yet, but we believe we'll be giving. We're close, but we think we'll be giving away more money to our organizations than we ever have before.
Outstanding. Good.
And actually, if it's okay, I have a check to hand off to our treasurer, who is Greg Polico.
Yes.
That's okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Give me money.
Pretty sure he'd think that's okay. Thanks, Julia. Anyone else like to address council this evening? Yes, sir. You said you were going to skate up, but all right.
I brought some visual aids in case anybody needed it. I know since none of you know me, my name is Brad Dahlhofer, 13 years, almost 14-year resident in Ferndale, living on Wordsworth, 8.5 between Woodward and Hilton. Real close to this new skate park that thankfully all of you had approved building. But I wanted to come up and say a couple words about it, because when I first saw it, I got to say, I was really excited. And the more I looked at it, and the more I started thinking about it, the more I heard people online talk about it, the more I realized, wait, this isn't really the park we want. And, not to sound ungrateful, but I was a little surprised. This is the first time I had even heard of it. And I was in the process of coming up with a plan to figure out how to raise money for our park, in the city already. If you don't know, I'm one of the co-founders of Bee Nectar Meadery, also in Ferndale, and I'm an avid skater since '83. So anyway, I had reached out to you and to the DPW and just kind of voiced the concerns, and it sounded like that I wasn't alone. And after looking at some of the chatter that was going on the forums, I decided to just reach out to everybody and see kind of what was the opinion, what's the public opinion, and it seems like we the skaters here in Ferndale, we all want concrete. There's definitely a lot of different ways to design a skate park, and I think the word design is critical here, because it's not the kind of thing you just go to the store and you buy. It's not like building a basketball court where you know what the dimensions are supposed to be and all that. So I would like to offer up my support in developing a new plan in revising the skate park, something that's based on concrete. I've reached out to some pro friend of mine that has given me a lot of references to designers, builders of skate parks that have been building parks all over the country as well as the world, and a lot of them here also in Michigan. But But I did want to also say, just again, thank you for supporting the skaters in this community. My wife and I are proud to say we just bought our new house on West Woodland, and we've been calling it the Forever House, so we're not going anywhere.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Brad. And I think at that point, I'm going to ask Lloyd to come up, because I know you guys have talked. We've been talking to Lloyd. We've heard. And Lloyd, as our director of DPW, has really he was responsible for securing the bids and that process. And Lloyd, do you just want to sort of update council?
Normally, I like that kind of introduction, but I think this time maybe I'll take a step back from that. You know, what I'd like to do, Mr. Mayor, is a picture says 1,000 words, as they say.
All right.
And I wanted to give those of home who may not know what we're talking about a visual. This is what we're talking about as opposed to a modular unit. I looked at this, and the first time I looked at this, I thought to myself, wow, it's cool, it's beautiful. Can we afford it? Kind of like when I started dating my wife. So.
He clearly doesn't watch this at home, right?
So, you know, I have to really.
That was a good one.
I have to really thank Brad. You know, I don't look at Brad as an adversary in any way. Brad and other people in the community contacted me almost immediately, and I have received some emails. And looking at what was possible, certainly made me take pause and want to research it a little bit further. So I have reached out to people in the industry who specialize in this work. As you can see, it's a very creative nature. So the type of work that we are looking at initially had some very strict specifications, play elements, the things that are normally done in bid specifications. This is more of a creative process, which will probably lead to a design build. I have meetings set up at the end of the month with this particular entity. I spoke to the owners. They are going to be doing a park. They just did one locally, but they're also going to be doing one in Sterling Heights. They'll be here at the end of the month. They're going there. They have a firm schedule. They're going to meet with me. And my intent would be to talk to other firms as well and see what price range they're in. They appear to be very competitive. And so once I get a schedule, I meet with some additional contractors. What I'd like to do is go back to interested parties, Brad, anyone else who might be interested from the public, including the original children and adults who were involved in the planning of the modular skate park, and then come back to the Park and Rec Commission with the help of the Park and Rec Director, and then bring something back to council once we have a plan.
Does anyone have any questions for Lloyd? Now, I guess one thing we should mention is, so at the last council meeting, we voted to engage, I forget the name now, but the other company.
American Ramp Company.
American Ramp Company. But we didn't sign those agreements, is that correct?
No.
So we're not
First
obligated
time in my
legally?
career, I didn't sign an agreement right away, but based upon the information I was getting, I thought it would be best to delay.
Just wanted to clarify that. So we have the, I'm looking.
Yeah, we're going to see. We might want you to retract that.
Is that
You
right?
may-
Is there something, that's
you may
what I'm
wish
getting at.
to-
Is there something we need to do?
You would have reserved the right to reject any and all bids. You did apparently approve it last meeting.
We did.
And there's been no reliance on, I assume, Lloyd, that the contractor, the awarded, the bidder hasn't been contacted with the contracts to execute.
No, I haven't entered into any agreements whatsoever.
But beyond agreement, I guess what you're saying is they haven't begun to
They haven't
incur
relied
costs
on
and
that
rely
based on
on
council's action at its
our
last
action
meeting.
that we're aware of. Okay.
Right. Council may wish to consider a motion which would at least hold the execution of the agreements and allow us to
That's what we should
take a look
do.
at the contractual language of the document.
Yes.
I'd like to enter a motion then that we hold the execution of the activity voted on in the previous meeting for further study.
Support.
Moved by Martin, supported by Polika. That seems like a prudent thing to do, just so there can be no misunderstanding between us and the contractor. Is there discussion on that motion?
Does that include, sorry,
The contract?
The concrete contractor as well, do we need to rescind that one as well?
I would suggest yes. It's for the
Okay.
same project.
We just add that as a friendly amendment then.
Why don't, yeah, a friendly amendment to, what'd you say, rescind or hold?
Hold.
Hold the quote from Hartwell Cement for the installation of the concrete surfacing.
Fancy.
Good addition. Yeah, that's right.
My support.
And he amends his support. All right. Other discussion or comments? Well, I want to say I appreciate your flexibility in this, Lloyd. We want to get this right. One of the things I've said is, we try different things in Ferndale, and we don't. If you try new things occasionally, you go oops, and you have to be willing to do that. And so I appreciate your willingness to take a second look at this. I appreciate Brad and all the folks that came out and helped educate us further on this. So thank you. All right, Marnie, would you call the roll on that motion, please?
Okay, council members Polika,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Leaks May,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes. So that item is adopted.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're still in call to audience, however, so if there's anyone else from the audience, please, yes, that would like to address council, you're still welcome to do so.
Hello, my name's Cody Hawken, and I'm actually a new resident to Ferndale. I just bought my first house in life 3 months ago, just a couple blocks up the street.
Excellent.
And,
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I've never lived here before, but I had absolutely no question in my mind that Ferndale is where I wanted to buy my first place. The quirky, charming sense of individuality that's in this town is such a draw that I couldn't see myself buying anywhere else. Awesome. So I'm 32 years old, and 18 of those years I've been a skateboarder. And in that time, I've traveled around the country a bunch. I've seen skate parks the world over. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I got to say, American Ramp Company, often bad and universally ugly, pretty much. This is a town of individuality and creativity, and a concrete park would really support that. I'd like to see something that inspires the community, and modular parks, there's many things that leave something to be desired about them. I've been to metal parks before where there's holes rusted through the ramps, creating, an insurance catastrophe, not to mention something that's not skatable by the community. Metal ramps, when it's hot outside, you fall on them, you get a burn in addition to your bruise. And then that's to say nothing of the fact that when you're going up a metal ramp on a skateboard, the sound that's made wouldn't be that cool for the residents. So I want to thank community for being so supportive of our voice and everything like that, and Brad for getting everyone together. And we've got a thread going on in the Facebook forums right now discussing what we'd like to see out of a skate park, and the community is really chiming in. We have a chance to make something beautiful, something that's going to help the town, maybe bring visiting pros in, which prefabricated park will absolutely not do. We can make something artistic, or we can have basically the functional equivalent of a McDonald's. Not that there's anything wrong with McDonald's, guys.
Yeah.
I had it for dinner too.
Whoa.
No
now
problem
you cross
on
the
that.
line.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm loving it, and I'm loving Ferndale. Thanks, guys.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
And let me just say, with a name like Cody Hawken, you kind of have to be a skateboarder, right? All right. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to address council on any issue of your choosing?
I did have one question left, and it's just an open-ended question, not to be answered tonight, but I feel like that when you say concrete park, it's like two words that don't go together.
Skate park.
Yeah, it's a skate park,
Yeah.
but the mass of the concrete is such a bigger footprint than what was originally planned, and so just will it fit into Wilson Park given the size? And I just think a lot of the requirements are going to change and needs to go back to the Park Commission for vetting and rethinking about everything.
And I think Brad wants to address
If I may?
that. Yeah.
The square footage that was allotted for the skate park here in Ferndale was in the neighborhood of around 10,000 to 12,000, was my understanding. Clawson Skate Park, in perspective, is 8,500 square feet and all concrete with a lot of fun. You know, it's the kind of thing that I can skate even being almost 40, and so can my kids being 6 and 9. So we know that the footprint that we've been allotted is definitely adequate, as well as the companies we've spoken with already have said that the budget that's already been approved is plenty to get a very fun park.
Okay.
That's the other part I'm very interested in is what those kind of bids come back, but thank you.
But I'm also interested in the crowds. Brad said that there could be big crowds to watch these events, and I just want to make sure that the park can accommodate crowds. So those are my comments for going forward, and I'll let you champion those with the Parks Commission.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else from the audience that would like to address council this evening? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. These are items that council considers routine, and we enact in one motion unless council pulls something from the consent agenda. So let me read that now. Item A is the approval of the June 12, 2017 regular and special meeting minutes. Item B is the approval to adopt changes to the fiscal year ending 2017 budget to comply with Section 17 of Public Act 621, the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act. Item C is the approval of the selection of Star Tracks as the preferred valet vendor during the construction of the development on Troy, pending approval of the agreement by the city attorney. Item D is the approval of the furniture and installation work for the DPW kiosk area project in an amount not to exceed $10,000 from the account listed. Item E is the approval to authorize the attached changes to the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Ferndale and ASME Local 998 for the period July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020, as submitted by our Human Resources Director. Item F is the approval to authorize the attached changes to the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Ferndale and the Police Command for the period of July 1st through June 30th, 2021, for July 1st of this year till June 30th, 2021, also submitted by HR Director. Item G is the approval of the date change from June 17, 2017 to August 26, 2017 for the Friends of the Library special event temporary liquor license. Item H is the approval of municipal and community credit contract for fiscal year 2018 and to authorize the mayor or designate to sign the contract. Item I is the approval of the backfilling and updated job description of the Deputy of Administration and placing both the Public Works deputies in grade 6 of the city's non-union compensation plan. Item J is the approval to fill the sustainability planner position to begin in fiscal year 2018. Item K is the approval of the voting equipment purchase order for 2 accessible voting devices and 4 electronic tabulators in the amount of $29,000 from Hart InterCivic as presented in the fiscal year 2018 budget and charge the expense to the account noted. And finally, item L is the approval of the bills and payroll as submitted by the Finance Director and subject to approval by the Council Finance Committee. Long consent agenda items. It is. Made up for by no more regular agenda items. But does council have any questions, concerns, or want to pull anything from the consent agenda?
I have questions of clarification,
yes,
if I may.
Questions.
For item, I don't know, the Star Tracks C, yep. What is the total value of this contract? I see the price in the contract at $20 per hour per parker, but what do we expect the contract to cost us?
Yeah, it could cost, it depends on usage. That's what we liked about Star Tracks. So it's very demand-based. We can scale up or scale down as need be. There's no lock-in price.
Right.
So the estimated would be between $65,000 at the low end, meaning it's not used and we're using it sparingly for some hours, up to $100,000 if it's used every day and there's a lot of demand for it. That's the wheelhouse we're in.
Okay, and just a request, whenever we have a cost estimate on a contract, can we put it in the agenda?
Absolutely.
So even if it's an estimate, I won't hold you, I understand that. And then my second question is item B, the approval of fiscal year ending 2017. Do we have to approve that tonight?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Do we have to approve that tonight? Because we got handed documentation today I haven't looked at.
Yeah, they're just adjustments. We'll be making more adjustments throughout the...
Okay, then on the document, real quick, myself, a lot of my questions. What's the difference between projected activity and 2016-17 activity through 6/21/17?
So let's define, yeah, and if you don't mind, just so everyone at home can hear you as well.
Thanks.
We'll have a finance director.
It would ease my comfort level in approving it tonight.
Good evening. So the first column is the actual activity.
Okay.
The second column is the original budget that was adopted back the beginning of the year when we go through the process, not this March, but a year ago March.
Sure.
And then the projected activity is, it should say projected budget. So that's what I'm projecting the budget to be for the end of the fiscal year.
So help me understand on a revenue line, how can we have a higher number in activity through 621 than a projected activity? Because we've already collected in revenue a certain amount, and then in a number of instances, the projected activity is half that.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. On page 15, for example, estimated revenues for non-business licenses and permits. The account number is 101-803-476000. We've got $8,300 in actual experience. Budget $4,200. I get that number. That's fine. But we're projecting $4,500. So if we've already collected $8,300, how are we projecting? And that happens a couple different times.
Yeah. Dan, it's probably just one I missed, honestly.
Okay. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot or embarrass you.
I get it. No, I get it.
When I get it at the last minute, I get nervous, and so I start finding stuff.
No, and I understand. And this was stuff that, as I've been looking at the budget, we pulled the projected numbers together in March when we did the budget, the 5-year going forward.
Yeah.
And so this is like the most recent activity that we have.
Okay, so there's a gap.
Yeah, there's a little bit of gap. So what we looked at in March,
Okay.
we just didn't anticipate it being like that.
So I think some of the fun stuff is newer. So if you look at the very back page, 38, the interest expense on GWKDD, the activity is 844, but we're projecting 146. Again, that's accrued expense, and that's just a difference of when we pulled the numbers. Very last line.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at that. That might be in the wrong place.
Okay.
And so I guess to Dan's original question,
Can we
the
table
need to do this
They're
tonight
saying no.
is
I think we do.
because we have to
So
report this to somebody, or
this is a process. It's really just a process of how we get through to audit. So we have to make adjustments as we see fit. Typically, in the future, we're going to be actually bringing these 3 times a year.
Great.
But so these will actually change again. These will not be the end numbers. They'll change again in July and probably in August as she goes through the audit process. So this is just more of a process issue. I apologize. In the future, we'll make sure you have more time to review it. But I do believe to help meet some of our needs in audit, we would appreciate it if you would approve this. And in the future, we'll make accommodations to make sure you have much more time to review.
So you're saying this isn't final?
No.
Well, let's do
No,
this.
no,
I'm comfortable approving it tonight, knowing there's at least 2 more copies of this coming, and I'll email you a list of my concerns after this vote, understanding we can adjust and change it, and then you can respond to me with those.
yeah, because ultimately, as we go forward with the budget, it's adopted on kind of a fund basis. So the information that we give you for each of the individual line items, when the auditors are looking at it, they're looking at the total amount of the expenditures, making sure that we don't oversee them, overextend them. So sometimes we might have stuff that I haven't caught yet that got put in the wrong account number, and I haven't started any of my audit work, so there's some of that stuff going on. The auditors are going to look at it in whole, in totality. Are your general fund revenues, do they match your general fund revenues that you actually earned?
So does it meet your audit needs to change the language on B from approve to adopt to approve to accept? Because I can accept a report with a clear conscience more than I can adopt a change.
Well, because these are through the Public Act, what this does is it changes the budget. If we were to not adopt it tonight and it didn't get adopted this fiscal year, then we would have the original 17 budget numbers that the auditors would be looking at.
So you need them to say adopt, not accept.
I do.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Other questions? I apologize for the lateness.
I do have a question on the consent agenda.
Yes.
Item G, just really some comments and maybe something that we could look into further. Just based on hearing some feedback, it looks like really the reason for this change is primarily because the library didn't really know about the brew what was it called? The beer?
Bourbon.
Bourbon, yes. It kind of affected their ability to get into their parking, and they had an event planned around that time.
Gotcha.
So I was just wondering if maybe in the future, festivals that want to come to our lovely town, if they could maybe do their own kind of community outreach regarding just reaching out to businesses and residents in the areas on their own to let them know kind of what's happening, and so that our businesses can plan. Also, a suggestion that came up is that maybe with these festivals that come into town, maybe kind of to give back is to maybe have some space available for the nonprofits in the area that, just kind of gratis. Like Citizens for Fair Ferndale or PTAs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is that something else that I heard is regarding maintaining, sort of leaving the area the way you found it. So just not, just kind of, keeping our businesses clean. I mean, picking up after yourselves, etc. And then one more thing to consider, and this is really regarding our ordinances, is something that to consider is that maybe having an earlier stop time for festivals on Sundays. I can totally understand people that want to get to work the next day, school next day. Just if we could really consider maybe looking at our ordinances and considering maybe an earlier stop time on Sundays for festivals. So that is it for me, yes.
I mean, those are very legitimate points that really get at our special events committee requirements and expectations. And I'm looking at April because you sit on the special events committee, I know, as do a number of people in this room. Are there, maybe a good place to start, are there sort of, is there a document with the current expectations and rules and regulations as we have them? Or is it sort of a event-by-event discussion?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. So there is a special event application process that is a product of the ordinance that is online that any and every special event applicant is supposed to go through. That application is reviewed by the special events coordinator and the special events committee. And part of that process is a requirement by the event owner to communicate to businesses within a radius. So we have received some feedback that businesses don't always receive that communication from the event owner. So I would say that it is on our priority list to revisit the special events policy and application procedure, and again, do an annual ordinance review with the ordinance review committee this fall. We've heard some of these things, and that's a priority for us to revisit and improve.
And so as a follow-up to that, how would the special events committee like to hear thoughts and comments that council might have on these sort of issues? What is the appropriate way to do that?
We can
'Cause that's
relay,
really
we can
what you're
relay them back. I
getting
can
at.
let Michael
Okay.
know
Yeah.
and Joe, and we can bring it back.
If I may, through the chair, because there's been a number of instances, this and other issues have come up. I brought up recycling recently. Could we potentially have a working session with the special events committee? I mean, I think they're mounting up enough that at least to revisit, not to add time to our schedules, but maybe, I don't know that we need more than an hour before a council meeting to do that.
Yeah.
We welcome that.
Okay.
This was my first ordinance I've ever worked on when I got onto council. So I think I think our events get bigger and more popular and more come, that the events ordinance always needs to be updated. And so I'm supportive of getting together and looking at the guidelines.
Yeah, not to strangle them, but I know sometimes they have concerns the ordinance doesn't fall into, and I think there are things we can do to support them too. Again, not to strangle off any events or anything or to make it unnecessarily difficult to have events, but I think we're a long way from unnecessarily difficult to have events right now.
I think that's true. Good points. Thank you. Thank you for bringing those up. Other comments on the consent agenda? Oh, yes.
I'm in trouble now.
Sherilyn,
Oh, not at all. When I see something like that, that bothered me. So with debt, the interest on the debt is our expenditure. and the principal on the debt comes off of the balance sheet. This particular item has been, again, I said I haven't done any of the audit cleanup. This is principal and interest in that line item.
Okay.
And it's only supposed to be interest. So what'll happen is the principal of the debt will go to the balance sheet and the interest will stay under what's budgeted.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
No, thanks for pointing that out. Just one more thing I don't need to.
No, it's great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Councilman Polika.
I have two items. Joe, 6C, Star Trek's contract.
Yes.
So, my understanding is that this is to support the businesses in the downtown while we're going through construction.
Correct.
When do we anticipate this to start? When can people anticipate there to be a valet person out there getting cars?
So pending approval and pending approval through the legal side, we move past that into planning phase, and I'm going to be convening a meeting with the DDA director and let him help lead that conversation. We discussed this last week on how to plan pickup points and strategies for implementing, but I can tell you at this point we're committed to introducing this temporary parking solution, TPS, no less than 2 months prior to groundbreaking. We want to endeavor to normalize the operation of any temporary solution that we introduce to the downtown, and so that's our endeavor. Doing that prior would be a matter of looking at the budget and see what opportunities there are.
Well, and the valet in December is going to be hugely popular, I think.
Right. Good timing for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Turkey pickup valet.
And Councilman, you had a second point? Or?
I do, but not for this one. So, Joe, you're safe.
Oh.
This may actually be for Lorena. This is about the SMART contract. And I'm just curious, as she comes up to the podium, a number of the seniors have expressed concern over the quality of the existing buses and their limitations for the events. And how can we guarantee that they get better buses with the approval of this contract?
There is something in the works with SMART where we're trying to get actually a bigger bus. It's kind of been delayed since I've been here. I can get more details for you where we are with that. But I know that that's on the wish list for the seniors as well as for the center.
Yeah, it was SMART promised us this year. Last year they promised us this year, and now they're saying this year, next year. And I'm just wondering how many approval contracts is it going to take for us to just say, we need a new bus. So,
okay. I'll definitely follow up with them.
My understanding, though, that it was 2 years out. That's why we had to go so fast. So if that's the case, it might be the end of this next year. So
Okay.
it was a very long process in order to get that bus.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right. That's a good discussion. Anything else on the consent agenda this evening? All right. If not, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Don't believe we have a motion.
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda as
Thank you.
presented.
Support. Moved by Martin and supported by Polika, correct? Yeah. All right. Now, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Piana?
Yes.
Weeks May?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda is adopted. We have no more regular agenda item this evening, and so we'll move now to call to council. And we'll start with the police chief. Chief, anything for the good of the community this evening? And the captain, I see, is here as well. Welcome back, Captain.
Nothing this evening, Your Honor. I would like to formally welcome back Captain Palazzolo, who would like to give you a short briefing on his experience at Quantico.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir. How is everybody?
Good to see you.
How are you?
Wonder where I've been for the last 10 weeks?
You were gone?
We've heard rumors, but you can fill us in. You've been gone.
I'm joking.
So I'd kind of like to give you a brief overview of what I've been doing for the last 10 weeks and a little bit about the FBI National Academy. I'm not joining the FBI. I've been asked if I'm leaving. The answer is no. The National Academy was started in 1935 after the Wickersham report because they realized that there's a need to standardize and professionalize law enforcement under some type of central training. So that is where the National Academy originally started from. Originally, it was open just to U.S. law enforcement agencies with Great Britain and a few of our international partners. It has since morphed due to President Kennedy in 1962 opening up internationally. In our class, we had 47 states there, and 24 countries were represented in the process. To get in is a pretty arduous process. I was in the pipeline for about 2.5 years. You need to be recommended, and then you need to be nominated by your local field office. There's a few candidates that I was with that took them 10 years to get to the school. So it's not just you just don't sign up and then you're involved. We graduated our 50,000th student in my class. I was 49,990, so I was just that close from being right there. We had some spirited discussions on everything from body cams to race relations, diversity, retention, officer wellness, anything you can think of. We didn't always get along in those conversations, but what we did realize is that whether it's NYPD with 36,000 police officers or a small police department with 12, that we all had the same problems. They were just on a different scale and size, but we're all fighting that same battle. I had the opportunity to make presentations on the early college program, our recruiting process, our venture towards body cameras, some of our personnel software that we implemented. And I got to tell you, and one of the biggest things was our community policing outreach. And it was really a validating experience to know that we are way ahead of the curve of everybody else. I've been bombarded with emails and questions. How's that early college program going? How does a 41-person department in Little Ferndale afford to have a community engagement sergeant? I can't believe you're doing all these big projects. And like we talked about during the budget process, we're a small department, but we're acting like a big department. And we're really making some strides. So I was very proud to walk away with that. I have a Rolodex of 228 people from around the world that I can reach out to if I have a problem or a question and I need some help. At Safety Town, I ran into Councilwoman Leaks May, and she told me to bring my yellow brick. So the history of the yellow brick, along with all the academics, they really place a large focus on physical and mental wellness. As you become higher in the ranks and you get a family and your time is cannibalized, you really don't have a lot of time for physical fitness. So they really try to instill getting back into a physical regimen. Every Wednesday we had a challenge that was mandatory, and you had to pass that or participate in that challenge. And at the end of the course, we ran the Yellow Brick Road. It was a 6.1-mile run through the Marine Course confidence/obstacle course, going over cargo nets and things like that. And you did it together as a group. And at the end of that, you were presented with your yellow brick. So the chief went through it 19 years ago. I went through it. We have 2 other lieutenants that have been through it. And I just wanted to let you guys know kind of what the FBI-NA was all about and the resources that are now at my disposal having that training and met those contacts. So, do you have any questions about it?
No, that's awesome. I think I need the yellow domino, though. I couldn't. The whole brick's worth of running. But
I do have a question, actually, on the community policing component that you mentioned and talking about how we're ahead of a lot of folks. Did you get the sense that people want to be there? Is there still resistance to doing it? I mean, it's a culturally different thing to do.
No, I got to tell you, we were lockstep that there are a few bad apples that have tarnished our profession that we've worked so hard for every single day. And we do not tolerate that. And that is across the board. Although I can't control what one individual does on one traffic stop and makes an extremely poor decision, it paints us all in a bad light. And we understand that. And we realize that we need to build back our legitimacy and our trust with the community. Everybody believes there's not a single person there that says, "Yeah, I don't need a resident to support me." That's just not how anybody was thinking that I met with.
Interesting.
So glad to say that we're doing a good job. We really are.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
We
Glad to
missed
be
you.
back.
Well, most of us missed you. Dan
I
didn't.
missed him. I was
Dan didn't know you were
I didn't even know. That's
All
right. I missed him.
He doesn't tell you about the blue brick and the red brick they got that didn't even exist 19 years ago for outstanding physical things that he had won as well. So he represented the city of Ferndale very well.
Awesome.
Outstanding.
Not surprised. Thank you. Jordan, anything from Community and Economic Development this evening? All right. Jenny, anything from HR? I skipped you. No? I skipped you 2 weeks ago accidentally. You're good? Okay. Marina, anything else from the Recreation Department this evening?
Good evening. I just wanted to recap. We had Safety Town last Thursday. It was our first Safety Town open house. We'll be having 5 total this summer, every second and fourth Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. We had great partners come out, police as well as fire, as well as Yvonne, who they call her Bike Vine, who did safety education on helmets and the bike lanes. We also had a lady come out to actually do playground safety as well. We want to thank all of our partners, police, fire, CED, as well as DPW, and everyone else who's supporting Safety Town. I invite you to come out and bring your families, your neighbors. We had a great turnout. We had over about 30 kids for the first open house.
Awesome.
And so we expect to have more, and we're implementing a passport program. So when the kids come out, they get stickers for every safety activity that they complete, and they get free prizes and giveaways from our partners as well. Coming up, we'll have Beaumont Hospital, a representative from Beaumont coming, as well as AAA of Michigan for the next one.
Excellent.
We also had our first Yoga in the Park this past Sunday, and it'll be every Sunday at 11 o'clock at Geary Park. So feel free to come out. It was an awesome time.
And you're going to do something else in the park too, right? Martin Park, August? No.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. So much going on. We'll be
No, you
having
got
theater
something.
in the park as well at Martin Road Park.
Shakespeare. Right?
Shakespeare, the 12th night. All right. Thank you. I have more updates next time.
All right.
Are you in it?
No.
Oh, come on. All right.
All right, thank you. I always ignore parking, but any parking issues you'd like to share with us? No. Chief Sullivan, anything from the fire department for the good of the community this evening? Not tonight, Your Honor. All right. Finance, you've already been up once, Chairman, but you want to come up again? All right.
I recognize it.
It's not at all. I just want to let everyone know that your summer tax bill should be hitting the mail stream June 30, July 1st. So we will be open on Monday, July 3rd. So we will be available to take payments. We're closed on Tuesday the 4th, and then we'll open back up on Wednesday the 5th. This year we are mailing out the coupons again like we did last year, so you don't have to come to the city to get your coupons. You will get them in the mail. I'm hopeful they'll come at the same time, but I can't control the mail. So you might get them before, you might get them after, but you should, if you are a resident, you should get your 8 coupons in the mail as well. If you have any questions, you can just call us. I'll be fully staffed for the whole month. That's all I
Excellent,
have.
thank you. And you know what, Chief Sullivan, that does remind me, though, before we meet again as a council, July 4th is coming. I'm looking at you because usually you have some tips and suggestions, and as you're walking up and to give us our tips and suggestions, I want to remind residents that you're allowed to use fireworks the day before, the day of, and the day after the 4th, and that's it. So it's still too early to do that. Correct, Chief?
That is correct.
All right.
The law allows before, the day of, and the day after, and it allows up to a middle class, which is below the professional fireworks. You're not supposed to fire professional fireworks. You need a license for that through the ATF, and you need a lot more precautions for it. I would say that the biggest safety thing when people are using some of these fireworks is they're not always dependable. So I'll share a quick story. Up north at the Sullivan Clan Cabin, Sullivan stepsons bought fireworks, decided to do their own show. They lit one. It went about 3 feet off the ground, supposed to go 30 feet in the air and explode. Went 3 feet up and went in every direction and hit everyone sitting around a fire and running in 10 different directions. So we had to use a fire extinguisher to put out several of the offset fires from it, and at that point, someone as loving as me ended the fireworks show. But again, they were cheap grade fireworks. They were bought. So when you buy fireworks, I would make sure you're buying them from someone who follows the proposed way of making them safe. And you have to realize that you may be able to fire them by law off your property, but they may not land on your property. And they do tend to cause a lot of roof fires and brush fires. So you should have extinguishers available and kind of be responsible for where these things are landing at. If you can, shoot them out over water or over a place where there are no buildings and that. But people tend to get excited and kind of forget the dangers of these. And I don't know the name of the video, but there's a really good one of a Roman candle that fires fireballs up every so many seconds. And the little dog was agitated by it, so it ran out, grabbed the Roman candle, and took off running, which now the Roman candle is horizontal and firing at all the people and cars and houses as it runs in circles with a firework ignited in its mouth. So when doing these things, one must take a lot of precautions to make sure it's safe for everybody, and the handling of them is extremely important. So be safe and always have safety equipment and first aid equipment. Burn cream is a really good thing to have handy.
Appreciate it.
I would like to add, Your Honor, is that yes, you are correct, is that the day before, the day of, and the day after, it also prohibits it from public property, in your street, in a public park. Those are not places where they are allowed. You have to fire them off from private property, which again, as the chief said, it restricts where these things land. But we will enforce the law if you are in the street or if you're in a public park or some other, where you go to someone's empty parking lot that you don't own. We will enforce the fireworks violations there too.
And what is defined for a fireworks violation? Just to scare people a little more.
I don't know. I'd have to
know?
look. I believe
Okay.
that I'd have to look that one up. Since
Okay.
we do know that the legislature is relooking at that. The Michigan legislature is relooking at that law, and there may be some changes in the near future.
Good. Thank you, Chief. So Lloyd is left, but anything else going on at DPW this evening that you would like to share?
DPW would like to give out a friendly reminder that July 17th, that Monday, the new recycle bins will start being distributed around town. They have a targeted completion date of mid-September.
Excellent. Good. That's it. We look forward to them. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Clarification through the chair. Next week is 4th of July.
Yep.
Therefore, garbage is delayed one day after Tuesday, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Monday's pickup will be as normal, but then Tuesday will be Wednesday, Thursday. Okay.
For those that don't know, Carlos Kennedy is our new deputy of operations for DPW. So.
Hey.
Well deserved.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Joe, anything else from the Assistant City Manager's office this evening?
All this talk about our independence, I would like to announce that the city does not collect parking on the 4th of July. We observe that state holiday as well. And yes, all of the stations will be signed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Parking. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank City Council because I will be starting my first paternity leave under the city's policy starting this Wednesday. So I get 6 weeks to spend with my newborn daughter, Maya Van Gacho, who is now 3 months, and I get to pick up the baton and take the hand off for my wife.
Yes. Awesome.
So thank you.
Enjoy your time off. It's well earned. And we look forward to seeing you in 12 weeks.
I just want to make note of his comment. He said his first.
6 weeks, I'm sorry. 6
You
weeks.
said your first
weeks.
paternity leave? Is there something we need to know?
Yeah, we'll cap it at 2.
Oh, okay.
So far.
I just didn't know if maybe there was something already in,
Moving on.
So one staff is is leaving, one is back. Marnie, welcome back. We missed you at our last meeting. It sounds like you had a wonderful vacation. Anything from the clerk's office this evening?
Nothing tonight? Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
very good. April, anything from the city manager's office?
No, everybody stole my thunder, but I just want to say a big shout out to Joe for all the work he's done on parking. It was been a significant endeavor that started in February of 2013, I believe.
When the meters turned on?
Yep. I was in Chicago.
I
got
remember
the phone
that
call
day.
from the mayor that said we have a problem. So a big shout out to Joe. It's fitting that tonight he gets to end, then go to the next 6 weeks to his other baby. This is really his second baby, really. So again, just a lot of time and effort.
He birthed the parking deck.
And research has been on his part. So I just wanted to give him a shout out for all the work he's done tirelessly on parking, not just the deck, but in general.
Truly. Yep. Well said. Dan?
Nothing tonight.
All right. Councilman Martin?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
All right. Councilwoman Leaks May?
Well, I will just want to send out a pre-congratulatory. I can't, I'm so emotional. All right. But my mom, who's a senior, is getting married this Saturday, and she has found love again, and I just want to congratulate her and her soon-to-be husband, David, and I look forward to celebrating their union on Saturday. One more thing. I am not surprised about this at all, but I just wanted to give just great appreciation, one, to our mayor for joining the other mayors regarding the Planned Parenthood advocacy. So I just want to thank you for that, and
thank you.
Proud to know you and proud to what you're doing.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Councilman Pollica.
I just want to wish everybody a very happy Independence Day, and please make it safe.
And Mayor Pro Tem Piana.
I just wanted to say I loved Porch Fest, and it was a great event for our community, but really I think my takeaway and my observation, it was the best neighborhood meet and greet you could design. Since I met a lot of new neighbors, and people were just really, really happy to be out biking and walking and listening and enjoying their community. And I wanted to give a shout out to the police because there were a lot of people in the streets that day, and I think that was an unanticipated outcome from people gathering in front of people's yards. And so I just wanted to say thank you for being accommodating, and I saw you guys in action, and so I just appreciate how well you treated everybody in front of someone's houses. I also wanted to say thank you for the Planned Parenthood standing up for women's health care with the other mayors. It's a critical time right now where we could all lose health care, quality care, access to care, and affordable care, and so standing up for what is right for us in our community so that people have and women have access to the care that they need. Last week I had the MML board retreat. I am a board member representing the city of Ferndale proudly, and I wanted to say that the league has so many great things planned for this year, but mostly the municipal finance reform and structure of local government their campaign is having an impact, and it's very exciting to learn that the conversations are now up at Lansing are different, and they are exploring how to increase revenue sharing for the communities, and that was actually a 1% put in the budget, right? So rather than neutral, we're actually looking at increases, albeit small, but it's the right direction to be going in, and I think it's a direct relationship to MML's campaign, SaveMyCity.org. You can go to SaveMyCity.org to learn about our broken municipal finance system, and we'll be having more talk about that in Ferndale in August with some partnership events with some communities along the Woodward Corridor, Ferndale hosting, but more to come on that. And then finally, happy 4th of July. Have a great time, be safe, and, try not to overeat.
All right. And for me, I don't have much. I will say thank you for the shout out about the Planned Parenthood. I felt that was important to do, especially because we're a community that hosts a Planned Parenthood office here that is routinely targeted by protesters and others. And I think it's important for folks to know the critical health services that goes on there and at all the Planned Parenthoods across the country. So I was happy to do that. And I would just add, have a safe and happy and relatively quiet 4th of July. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.